Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Philp, and I'm gonna explain you a little bit about all the mods in Lilcup. It's been a slight period of time since I uploaded another video. I'm sorry for that, but I really did not have time between the first episode and the second episode. I thought I could have instantly recorded, but I couldn't. So without further ado, let me actually get straight into this stuff, because there is so much to talk about. I already covered a lot of Pokemon like Pikipek and whatever, but I need to fix a couple of things that I suggested. The Cutiefly sets, this set might actually have been slightly too offensive. It might actually be better to run a bit more in HP and then spread out that other IV into either defense or special defense, and then the remaining amount also in a defensive set like that. Overall, I don't think it will be overall, I very much think Cutiefly, because the metagame is out right now. Like I can look for, yeah, look at this. Gen 7 OU beta, Pokebank OU beta, Challenge Cup beta, all these things in the beta form, they're already out. That's actually great. But next up, we are going to talk a little bit about the fact that Cutiefly, as well as certain other mons, are already under question whether or not we may or may not have to introduce a Battle Pass clause, because that could actually be. We could end up having to use a Battle Pass clause. Next up, we have the fact that, like I said, it could be that Cutiefy might introduce the Battle Pass clause into our metagame, and I was right. I was goddamn right. But I definitely think I underestimated Mudbray very much. I have seen a lot of unique sets. I underestimated some parts of calculations, like, oh, I don't need to calculate Icicle Crush on Shelter. This thing takes like, if you run a more defensive set with Eviolite and Restock, this thing counters Shelter with a Scarf set. Meaning you need to Shell Smash up, and that would make you very prone for any priority attack after EQ launches, or if he just crits, that will actually KO Shelter as well. This thing is massively strong, and I really underestimate some parts of that. But the set right now that I suggested, the only thing I changed is Bulldoze into Heavy Slam, because Heavy Slam actually allows you to deal with Fairy types, which is decent, as well as have pretty decent coverage against Pokemon like Arcan as well, which is really cool. Overall, I do think this is still the best set, straight up, like the two set options. I definitely think Scarf is it's worth to note, but it's not the most potential thing. It has enough speed to run it, so I'm not complaining. Just can't abuse its very good ability. So I talked about all these Pokemon. The thing about Alolan Pokemon, this Basebin or this Base D does not include data around the Alolan Pokemon. The only data it shows is the typing and whatever, as it doesn't actually have a learn set for those things. It actually just pastes the regular learn set. Every other Pokemon I rechecked, or not everyone, but in rough lines to see, oh, would that be correct? Yes, about everything else in it is completely 100% correct. And that's stupid because the previous base bin that had the Alolan Pokemon data is gone now. It has been taken down. Now that's stupid to say the least. Without further ado, let me actually go talk a bit about the other mons, because this thing actually does get Icicle Spear and Icicle Crash. That's really good. Also Iron Head and such. So this thing is still very relevant. I definitely think you should afford running Swords Dance. It doesn't get Ice Shard, sadly, as far as I know. Like, C plus was my guess. I actually think it's gonna be B minus now, because really, this thing, even though it needs Hail, and that's a bit of a liability because the Hail mons still aren't that good, we definitely think Snover is better this gen. We definitely think Amora is still good and has better reasons to use the Snow ability now, especially with the slight drop in damage output from Refrigerate. So Blizzard is much more viable in that regard, or more preferable, not more viable. Alolan Vulpix is still Alolan Vulpix. I a bit overrated it. I expected it to be like, oh, it's gotta be like B minus or C plus. C mid or C plus is now my opinion. It's not as big as I originally thought. The other Pokemon I already talked about, like these. Now let me go straight into Alolan Geodude, because that's actually quite relevant. Alolan Geodude, this set is the one set I recommend. This set works in on Nosepass, his utility of having Volt Switch plus Stealth Rocks. That's probably the main combination. Now this thing also has access to Earthquake plus very strong Rock Blast. Something that Nosepass definitely doesn't have. It has no damage output. In fact, it relies purely on spamming Thunder Wave. Thunder Wave has been slightly nerfed this gen, but I still think it's very relevant to have Thunder Wave. This thing doesn't get that. So it can play in on that. So Nosepass will still have, at very least, that bit of utility. Now on top of that, this thing actually has very shitty damage output against ground types. In fact, Mud Break can come in for free. In fact, if it comes in on Rock Blast, it will get like +5 defense if you hit all 5. That is scary. That means no physical mon is going to do any damage against it. Even your strong Carvanha or your Corphish or whatever, it just won't do any damage. But if we look at other Pokemon, for example, even Diglett can come in on an Earthquake and just take it out. If it's sturdy, it was already broken. It can literally switch in on an Earthquake, take the hit, and then kill it. That is how weak it is with Earthquake. Now Rock Blast is not to underestimate. It's actually very powerful, coming from 18 attack with stab. But on top of that, I don't really see much of a use. I already wrote down most important things. The other sets, the Galvanized set, it's shit. It's really bad to say least. Having access to Stealth Rocks, being a suicidal lead, if anything. Having Volt Switch, more of a momentum gain to being a bit more durable. I definitely think you need Earthquake for a lot of coverage options, not just to at least hit ground type Pokemon, but just in general, it's really good coverage. It's a shame it doesn't get stab on that anymore. Also, not having Sucker Punch anymore means it's absolute bait against Pokemon like Diglett as well because of that, and so on and so forth. I also know that the Rock Polish stat, not too happy about it. This is pretty much what I wrote down. I want to add a bit more to this, besides saying, oh, it beats Slowpoke. All the other parts are outclassed by Geodude. But that's actually what it does. The only relevant poke I could think of that is 2-hit KO'd with this set, what regular Geodude wouldn't, is Slowpoke. And that should say enough about how bad that set is to compare. Thunder Punch is your best stab coverage. You can run Wild Charge, but that would break sturdy, and that's not something you want. Then we have Alolan Rattata. Now this thing, let me actually go a good bit about this. This thing is suggested to be absolute shit. I think this thing is C plus material straight up. Nothing more, nothing less. Or B minus. Nothing more, nothing less. This thing has 17 speed, has hustle, has every coverage move it really wants to have, and the only thing that still somewhat blocks it are certain fairy types. And the best thing is, Cottony can't use Thunder Relief against it anymore. It can't use Encore against it anymore, or whatever. It's thanks to the Prankster nerf, which is really cool. Yeah, Dark types are, by the way, immune to opposing Prankster status and whatever. Like, say a Cottony used Fake Tears, it would be immune to that. Say it used Sunspore, it would be immune to that. Say it used Encore, it would be immune to that. Doesn't mean Tailwind doesn't work anymore, and I definitely think Tailwind will be massively more used on Cottony right now, because that essentially works in the same way, but was less reliable in instantly dealing with the opponent and whatever. But that makes Dark types a lot better for setup, specifically Pawniard, especially with the Scarf set that's going to be immune to Sunspore, for example. Excuse me, my throat is getting a little bit dry. But this thing is an absolute nuke. Having access to Return plus Crunch essentially hits perfect coverage already. The only poke you miss out with coverage will be Pawniard. Like, that actually is only Poniard. Most fairy types are clean 2-hit KO'd by return. Snubble is actually potentially 1-hit KO depending on the set by return. That is scary. But keep in mind, this is Life Orb Hustle. This is about the maximum of the maximum you can go. I'm even running Knave. I'm running Knave Nature, not like Adamant or something. Knave. That is meant to be jolly, actually. I still have that from a previous set. I for whatever reason had the stupid idea of forgetting it was a normal type when making the set, even though I literally had like a shard with its type and everything next to me. And that's a very stupid overlook, because that's... It should speak for itself why it is stupid. I had Sludge Bomb on that because that was the only coverage I saw that was like worth it, because return otherwise is way too weak. Excuse me for that static, that was me betting against that. Flame Wheel is the only coverage you have to hit Poniard, but don't worry, that's actually 2-hit KO. You are very resistant against Sucker Punch. You are 17 speed, so we're gonna outspeed Poniard as well. So it can at best check you if you Flame Wheel on a switch in. You can also run U-turn to gain momentum, but as I just said, I don't really see the point. Essentially speaking, you're wasting a slot in my opinion, because you can run Flame Wheel to cover Poniard, or you can run Pursuit, more preferably, or you can run Crunch if you want to have Pursuit, Sucker Punch, and Crunch. Yeah, this thing is pure Dark Stab, but who cares? This thing is a nuke. The only downside that I have with this Pokemon is its 80% accuracy. That is the only single downside I have with this Pokemon. Everything else is lovely about it. Anyways, going to the next one, Alone Meowth. Yeah, this thing isn't as much good. This thing isn't as good. Parting Shots is a nice niche thing, I guess. But losing access to your strong physical utility makes you very prone for a lot of things. Meowth's main use was having Feint, Fake Out, Aerial Ace. Yeah, essentially those three moves. Those counteract balance so damn hard. The primary balance score includes Minfu, Fungus, and some kind of fast offensive trapper combined with that. Actually more for offense. It counteracts offense and also fairly much against certain balance parts, which were commonly used on offense. Like Fungus is probably the only defensive thing you will see on offense, and maybe defensive story, but get the point. This thing doesn't get that anymore, so it needs to rely on purely Dark Pulse, Hidden Power Fight. Hidden Power Fight is still boosted, I guess, with a bit more special attack than originally. It switched its physical and special attack. I'm not too happy about it. It doesn't really give you all that much, and without Nastyplot up, you're not even gonna do any proper damage against anything. Like, actually, you are weak. Even with the Life Orb, you are weak. This thing is shit, to say the least. I've done the calcs for this thing, plenty enough. I still have not found what would make this thing potentially good. And I can't even look that up anymore because, well, the moveset is gone. So yeah, that's this thing. Then we're gonna go to Rufflet. It's very cute, but not that good. Having access to Sonach, Sucker Punch, Stealth Rocks, that's all nice, don't get me wrong, but it only has Howl as setup. Fire Fang is the only coverage you have against grass and whatever. You can run Return, I guess, but that's shit. It doesn't get Earthquake. I know why. It doesn't get Bulldoze either. I can actually look that up for you right now. Rockruff. As you can see, Sand Attack. That's the first ground type attack you will see. That's the only ground type attack you will see. As you can see, this is its coverage. That is pretty shit coverage. I'm sorry. Lichen Rock has a little bit more of a utility option with some pretty decent strong attacks. On top of that, for example, Acceler Rock, having access to Brick Break to hit certain Steel type Pokemon. Rockruff doesn't have that slight utility. Yeah, it isn't. Right now, a lot of stuff has been going around. I'm very, very happy. Like, already did a couple of battles, already swept some people with a certain mon that I'm gonna go talk about very much later in this video. It's Porygon, by the way. But yeah, that Rockruff, I actually made a small description about it. You can read it up. I will post this link now below because I finished this base bin. Then Crabrawler. Let me actually fix this a little. That's good. Okay, so Crabrawler. No amazing fighting stab. It doesn't have Drain Punch, it doesn't have High Jump Kick or whatever. So that's already a slight downside compared to Pokemon like Timber, Croagunk, Mienfoo, even Scraggy, Riolu, all those Pokemon. Even though Timber doesn't have access to High Jump Kick, or Croagunk have access to that, but they do have priority in fight, and that is really freaking good. Crabrawler also doesn't have that great dark attacks, much like Pancham in early X and Y. It doesn't have any good dark type attacks. It actually got knockoff Gunk Shot and Zen Headbutt in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire by tutorial, which essentially made the thing good. Also Drain Punch, very important. That made the thing good. This thing seems like it will fit the same description. This thing has the same defenses as Pancham. This thing has the same attack as a Mienfoo. And this thing has the same speed as a Mienfoo. But it has no thing that would make it shine. It's outclassed by Mankey for fast offense. It's outclassed by Mienfoo for Scarf or something else that is fast. Because Mankey wants the Life Orb. It's outclassed by Timber for bulk up. It's outclassed by Pancham for bulky utility. It doesn't get access to any momentum gaining moves. It lacks too much, and I definitely think this thing could be potential. It even has Iron Fist, which is pretty decent and comparable to what Pancham had, but it doesn't get Drain Punch. I don't know why. It's a brawling Pokemon. Come on, it punches stuff. Why? Come on. Like, I could go in depth about why you need this coverage. Steve is probably the most preferable thing. It actually hits Pokemon like Pumpkaboo and Frillish, but also Pokemon like Ghastly, which is pretty good. So going into Young Goose, I don't think this thing is bad. Please understand that. But this is actually the best set it would run with Hidden Power Fire on such a weak special attack set. Having access to Life Orb plus Stakeout essentially means nothing can switch in on you. Nothing can switch in on you. You do so much damage. You almost one-hit KO every not defensive Pokemon on a switch in. Bulky Pokemon like fast bulky Mienfoo, they can take a hit, but they're dying the next turn. Pokemon like... No, excuse me, I actually listed that wrong. No, bulky fast Mienfoo was one hit KO'd. Defensive Mienfoo is outsped the next turn. That essentially should sum up why this thing is an amazing stall breaker. There is nothing that switches into this thing. Nothing. And the best part is it can run a lure set to prevent switching in with adaptability, which essentially speaking allows you to actually hit with a massively powerful return on top of that. It doesn't have the greatest speed. I think it has like, that's 15, I think, with Naughty Nature. Yeah, that's 15. That's 15. So that's pretty decent to stall break. That's comparable to most stall breakers, like look at Barbarical with Choice Band. That's a very shitty example. That's actually one of the most outclassed ones that I actually hate with a sheer passion. But think about Choice Band and Corphish, for example. Can hit 14 speed, often runs 14 speed as well. A good comparable thing. Yeah, overall, Hidden Power Fight is the only coverage that it has to hit First Seed, but as you can see with Stakeout, yeah. That is under the assumption of how Stakeout would boost. It's slightly different in the actual calculations, which I try to replicate by filling it in myself. It does essentially the same, but this is in the assumption that the calculation goes at an earlier point. Now, in reality, it goes at a later point, which means it has even more influence for LC calcs. But yeah, you kind of get the point. Facade is purely for Pokemon like Ponyta. If they would switch in and they would get lucky, you would still be able to have some coverage that actually hit like a truck. Because 140, yeah, I wouldn't want to be whatever Pokemon that is. Also, Toxic Spikes has been a bit. I've seen a good amount of Pokemon use Toxic Spikes. I think that might actually be pretty decent against it. Toxic Spike is a thing to look out for right now, but I don't think it's all that relevant. Then we have Salandit. Now this thing outclassed Litten by every single way possible. This thing has 18 speed. This thing has access to knockoff, flame charge as a physical move pool. It has access to sludge bomb, fire blast, and flamethrower. That's about all it needs. Poison plus fire is comparable to dark plus fire in terms of coverage. In fact, that's even better than that, because sludge bomb does so much more against fairy types, which were the primary switch into Pokemon like Houndour when it was first discussed in X and Y at the very beginning. Sludge Bomb does more against Pokemon like Chinchou, Pokemon like Staryu, etc. It also has a chance to poison on top of that. You can also run Sludge Wave, but I'm not too big of a fan of that. The damage difference isn't all that much, and the chances of getting a poison, if you get the poison, that actually does a slight bit more. You can run Sludge Wave, I wouldn't be against that. I actually think that might be somewhat preferable, but I just want to have that poison chance. It's pretty nice. Corrosion and Oblivious are both completely unimportant in this set because nothing of this abuses either of those. This is the Life Orb set. This is a very offensive set. It's quite good. And then we're gonna go to Nastyplot Super Attacker set. Life Orb can run Fire Blast, Sludge Wave, can run Hidden Power Grass to lure, which is a very important move, and Nastyplot. If you don't want Nastyplot, you can run Substitute combined with Berry Juice. Hidden Power Grass is probably the most important move on this because it allows you to lure. It works the exact same as this, but this set actually uses Flame Charge, and I really want to abuse Knockoff on top of that because that makes you deal with a lot of important things. Flame Charge makes you less prone to Diglett. I've not seen that many Diglets yet, but I've not seen that many battles yet. I definitely think Diglett and Gothita both are ban-worthy in this gen. Even more so than in previous. Simply because of how current point we are discussing Battle Pass as being somewhat too good. Like, we might need to introduce Battle Pass clause, and I did rather introduce Battle Pass clause than ban Cutifly, because Cutifly is not broken. If you're saying Cutifly is broken, you're wrong. The thing actually doesn't do enough in terms of raw damage, in terms of raw utility to make it good. It can pass to something like, say, a Porygon, a regular Porygon, and suddenly you are 100% dead, because it could have had a +2 ult as well, or a +1, and you can't do anything against that. You're essentially gonna lose. But that's Cutifly. This thing, however, Nastyplot, very, very nice. You already 2-hit KO most of the meta, but having Nastyplot is really a nice option because that means you can 1-hit KO a lot of things of the meta. Excuse me. And that's even more preferable. Substitute is purely for against Diglett as well as against some Sucker Punch or whatever, or something along those lines. It can give you some utility, especially in this metagame. You are faster than most Pokemon, having that 18 speed, so that's really nice. You also speed type Doduo, which is also relevant. Then we have Stuffle. Now this thing is loved by so many things in the community. I have to re-look that up. Kingler actually made a nice note to that this thing actually doesn't have all that much to go for in terms of coverage. And I actually know that Ice Punch, and he was kind of surprised by that, Ice Punch allows you to hit Pumpkaboo as well as Ghastly. Especially Pumpkaboo, it's 2-hit KO'd by this. But Ghastly, you hit Ghastly. That's enough, in my opinion. Ice Punch doesn't actually do that much in terms of coverage because Return actually does more against Fungus, does more against Hippo, and all that kind of stuff. it doesn't do all that much compared to return. And that's really good because normal fight coverage, even though that's like, oh, what does normal do for it? It's so bad, it's so bad. It's offensive coverage. I don't give a shit if that coverage is completely, if that defensive typing is bad. I don't care. This thing is gonna 2-hit KO about everything that isn't immune to it or isn't. No, that's literally it. That's immune to it. This thing has access to 18 attack with the set that I'm currently running, which runs animate. I'm running a little bit of speed. I essentially think this is 12 speed, if I'm right. I think that's 12 or 13. 12 or 13. That's 13 speed. That's 13 speed. It has access to some very powerful attacks. It has access to... Yeah, that's 13 speed. That's definitely 13 speed. It has access to some pretty great defensive stats as well. To set up a sword dance, that's really good. It has the Stuffle ability, which essentially means it's gonna take a move like a Mag Punch from Timber. Not even gonna do it KO. Not even gonna do close to that. Other fight types even have issues counteracting it if they are slower, specifically Timber. Because the moment it sets up a Sword Dance, yeah, return is gonna 2-hit KO you. Well, no, it's not gonna 2-hit KO you because it's gonna do massive amounts of damage. But you get the point. This thing is really, really good, and I definitely think it's gonna be worth something along the C line. I don't think it's gonna break through as much as you would assume, but it's definitely good. Next up we have Morlul. Yeah, actually the Learn Up set actually listed it very nicely. At level 29 it learns Giga Drain, after that it learns Strength Sap, then it learns Spore, and then it learns Moonblast. This should be everything it needs to run. I'm questioning if Moonlight isn't more preferable because it actually allows you to be less prone against Poniard as well as have more reliable recovery, but it has less PP and combined with being hindered by weather is a bit arguable. I definitely think this is a good mon. It's gonna be pretty relevant this gen. Like, smash this thing in like what height? B plus? Nah, B plus, B mid or B plus. One of those two. This thing actually has just as effective defensive typing as many other Pokemon just wanted to have, and having that fairy type just makes it like Moonblast actually does like just below 50% against Poniard. That's scary. That's actually very good damage if you just run 75 special attack, because look at this thing's special attack set. That's actually not that bad. That's actually not that bad. It's still gonna see a lot of competition from Fungus, but having Pokemon like Mudbray running around, even with Heavy Slam, this thing is still a relevant check to it. Like, actually, it actually is. And I'm happy for this thing. This thing looks good. It's also the first Pokemon to run Effect Spore and not be complete shit. Sandygast. Now, originally I had Rock Polish and whatever in the set, and then I realized that's actually completely irrelevant. It gets Shore Up, which is a reliable recovery that essentially works the same way as Synthesis, except for the fact that, say Stand War Up, you recover more, is not hindered by sun, not hindered by rain, and not hindered by hail. This thing always recovers 15% and recovers just more in Stand. Not bad. It's also gonna outclass Golett, even though Golett got Drain Punch, Dynamic Punch, and Ice Punch, and even Shadow Punch in this gen. I think it already got Ice Punch, I don't know. It got Shadow Punch this gen, which is pretty cool. That's stab for it. But this thing actually has very good special attack. That's 17 special attack with Quiet Nature, by the way. Shadow Ball, Earth Power, that essentially already hits every Pokemon with the exception of normal flying types, and Vullaby. That's everything. It also has Stone Edge, which 2-hit KOs Vullaby, defensive Vullaby, if rocks are up. Not bad, not bad. Means it's not completely setup bait, not complete bait for those Pokemon, but I definitely think it's relevant, because that actually means it's gonna be able to do stuff. Because everything else is immunized, and this is so good coverage overall. Like, that's alright, it doesn't even need the speed. It has recovery, it has pretty good defenses as well. Or pretty decent at very least. Like it has like what 16, 18? I think that's either 16 or 18. It has some pretty good HP, like that's 23 HP. I think 23, yeah. 12 special defense. Overall, that's quite decent. That's quite decent. So next up, I'm gonna talk about Dupe Hitter. Now, Dupe Hitter, I originally thought, okay, this thing is gonna be, I was very much looking for a niche with like water absorb, because bubble was like redundant. It was redundant at that point of time. It just was more resistance to fire, and I definitely wanted to go Restock because that allowed it to at least abuse its Scald as well as its Lung utility, because its damage is shit. Its damage is actually shit before knowing that it's a 2x boost. Spoilers, by the way, Water Bubble apparently does twice the damage for water type moves. Compare that to Adaptability, which is 1.5 times. This thing does twice the damage. Compare that to Rain, which does 1.5 times. This thing does twice that damage. This thing is scary, to say the least. Having Restock actually makes it outclass Skrelp by a lot. Having access to Lung means it's gonna be able to hit Pokemon like Fungus. Not that it's gonna matter. Fungus can do shit against this thing anyways. Sure, it's gonna wall it, but this thing is actually gonna win on the long run. This thing is just gonna win. This thing doesn't care. This thing is actually quite scary if you look at the calcs. There is not much that can come in on this thing, trap it or defeat it. In fact, it actually, with Lung, is able to 2-hit KO Gothita very clean. It's going to be able to wither down most grass type Pokemon, and having Scald means a lot of physical attackers are going to be irritated. Lung also drops your attack 100% the moment it hits. That is also a bit of a downside for physical attacks. This thing looks scary. This thing actually looks scary. And my original intention was, oh, with like whatever, it will be like C- or D. It will have a niche. And now it's like, yeah, it's gonna be B. It's gonna be B. If you actually realize how little things deal with this thing 1v1, that's scary. Now, the one thing that I do want to point out, the moment it loses its Eviolite, most of its defenses is actually quite bad. It has 23 HP with this much investment. It has like, how much was it? Like 14 defense, I think. Yeah, with that's 14 defense. And like 16 special defense. Not bad, but also not good. Now, some other people also suggest, oh, let's run a Life Orb on this. It doesn't really outclass Life Orb Skrelp, if we're gonna argue that. And bulky attacking Skrelp, so just not running Restock and running something else on top of this with like more special attack, that's outclassed by Skrelp in every single way. If you're actually gonna argue that it's outclassed in every single way besides being not prone to trappers, I definitely think this thing might turn a lot of tides for the metagame to be more slow based. Having Water Bubble makes it immune to burn anyway, as well as have less damage from fire attacks. But this thing is good. This thing is actually quite good. Young Mo. When people first saw this, they heard like, oh, it gets Dragon Dance. Wow! And then they realized, oh, wait, no, they never realized it. They still haven't realized it. Actu outclasses in every single aspect. There is not a single move this thing can run that would not make it outclassed by Actu. Now, I actually prefer running a Life Orb set because I saw Focus Blast and I was thinking, oh, Focus Blast with Draco. That's literally it. That's all it needs to put in work that no other Dragon type so far has been able to do. So, yeah. That's its niche. These two moves combined. That's its niche. You can run Draco, Dragon Pulse for substantial damage. You can run Hidden Power Poison to lure in Morlul, Cottony, other fairy types because it's actually 2-hit KO Snubble. This has like a massive chance to 2-hit KO Spritzy if I remember correctly. That's pretty good. It has Substitute to prevent status, it has Safeguard even to prevent status for its team as well. You can put up a Workup, that's all pretty nice. Having Bulletproof combined with Substitute or Safeguard makes you completely immune to anything Fungus could do besides Clear Smog. And you don't really care because Draco is going to do more anyway. Workup is a nice setup move, makes Draco more powerful. That's essentially it. That's this Pokemon in a nutshell. It's going to be quite slow. Having access to having only 14 speed with a modest nature, it has like 15 special attack. That doesn't sound like a lot, it's not a lot, but that's enough for Focus Blast to one-hit KO many important things, and Draco to do easily enough against most walls. Porygon 2-hit KO'd with this Draco, if you're running Life Orb. That's essentially the use that Dratini originally had, and this thing actually somewhat does that better thanks to Focus Blast. I see that I'm already recording for a decent amount of time, but I really need to go over most of other months as well. For Mantis, it got Defog. It's essentially a Snivy clone having access to Leaf Storm, Hidden Power Fight. Not that much. I actually wrote a small description about it. It essentially needs to fire off a Leaf Storm against most ground types. It's gonna be able to counter lead very effectively, actually. Like, Defog plus Leaf Storm makes its niche, having access to Synthesis, Reliable Recovery, etc. It's not bad. It's definitely not bad. I definitely think it's gonna be decent. No. I definitely think it is bad, but it won't have like the worst utility because Defog plus Leaf Storm at least gives it counter lead utility, and that's about all it really needs, in my opinion. Because this counter leads every single Stealth Rock setter, and having access to Defog makes it even remove those hazards. Yeah, that's actually pretty freaking good. Its defenses are not great, the special attack is not great, everything else in stats is outclassed by Snivy in every single way. But yeah, Defog plus Leaf Storm, that's what it needs. Wimpod essentially works the same way as Venipede, having access to fast spikes. But this thing has Wimp Out, an ability that makes you essentially pivot for free the moment you are being hit. Leech Life, somewhat recovery, somewhat damage. Scald, it burns, that's all you need. Taunt, less setup bait. Having access to Berry Juice, yeah, you're gonna be able to take a hit, less worn by Stealth Rocks, etc. Pretty decent. If you like, take less damage from a hit once you are hit. Your typing is like Water Bug. It's not that bad, not that bad. Dog shit stats, however, in terms of attack. Even its defenses are not that good, but its speed is about all it needs. Like fast spike setter. Like the only other Pokemon that does the same is Venipede. So this thing actually has a niche because Wimpod. Like, I'm not complaining, that's actually quite good. Compare it with like a trapper like Diglett or whatever to counter lead. It's gotta put in work. Bounce Sweet, this thing won't work. This thing is simply bad. This thing has Rapid Spin, and that's about it. This is a grass type with Rapid Spin. Compare it a little bit to like the small nuts of Shiftry, like the small thing. Yeah, that one. That thing had Defog. No one even knows it has Defog. This thing will be the exact same as that. So I'm not gonna go over that thing. Grubbin, complete shit. I made the most offensive stat I could think of. This is gonna be bad, but having access to Acrobatics plus Berry Juice, having some damage output in Swarm, Accessor, not that horrible physical attack, not that extremely horrible special attack, like 17 physical attack, 13 special attack, and like, what was this, 14 speed, having Full Switch, Hidden Power Grass to hit most rock, to hit every rock, ground, and water type, even though Full Switch is more preferable for water, and Acrobatic to hit every grass type, as well as fight types. That's pretty good to note as well, because this thing is a bug type, not even electric type. Okay, I need to adjust that. Excuse me. I use different Pokemon for bases because I made this like a while ago. So that's Grubbin. That's about all you need to know for it. Pretty good, pretty good. So next up we're gonna talk about the unobtainable ones, type null. What does this thing get? Well, I apparently don't need to talk about this because it can be obtained. That's essentially it. This thing literally would... This set is an offensive set. This thing would essentially hit everything in the metagame. Outspeed almost everything in the metagame. No, not outspeed. This thing, after a boost, because it has 14 speed, if I remember correctly, with this investment, or this is like 16, I don't know. It has 20 attack, max. It has 25 HP or 27 as well. That's insane. That's no, it's 27. That's insane. Its defenses are insane. Its coverage is shit, but who cares? Return is gonna do massive damage. After a sword sense, you're gonna one-hit KO everything in the metagame that doesn't resist it. Flame Charge hits every single steel type for enough damage. It's gonna 2-hit KO everything of steel type. With the sword sense up, everything is one-hit KO'd, with the exception of Magnemite. Hidden Power Grass 1-hit KOs every rock or ground or grass type, with the exception of Hippo and Mudbray. But who cares about those two? You're gonna one-hit KO them with a +2 return anyway. This thing is ridiculous. I can't explain how ridiculous this thing actually is. It flame charges up. It sets up a sword dance. It flame charges up against whatever comes in, and then it just kills the metagame. That's literally it. Rocks need to be up. That's done. That's literally the game. Then we're gonna go to Cosmog. This thing is a joke. I'm not gonna go about this thing. This thing is literally even the... This thing dethroned Caterpie, Regigigas, Fion, and Unknown as being the worst Pokemon, the worst Legendary, and the worst move pool in existence, all at once. Spoilers, by the way, this thing is a Legendary. Then we're gonna go to Cubchoo. Cubchoo doesn't do any fucking thing. It's literally outclassed by Alolan Sandshrew in about every single way. Play Rough is gonna be able to hit most fight types. Without Life Orb, you won't even 2-hit KO, and you don't even come close to 1-hit KO. This thing doesn't do all that much. About everything else is completely outclassed. Not even having Earthquake is a big pain. Has only poor stab in the form of Ice Punch. Not that important. Has Hone Claws to set up instead of Sword Dance. Yeah, this thing's not that good. Doduo. Turns out it can't have the combination of Knockoff plus Jump Kick. For now. But it will in the future. Or it should in the future. This essentially is the set that you're gonna run. This is about it. Life Orb, Knockoff, with Double Edge, Brave Bird, Jump Kick. Strong enough, it's gonna be one of the most important Pokemon in the entire metagame, definitely. It's gonna replace Fletchling for about all the utility it currently has. If Flying Gem is allowed, and that's actually fairly fun, let me actually scroll down because I really want to talk about Fletchling for a moment. Because that's our nerfed one. Fletchling with a Flying Gem would not even be that bad. You just need to ensure rocks are always off the field. But if it uses its Flying Gem Acrobatic and doesn't get lured, that one-hit KOs Minfu, Fungus, clean 2-hit KOs a lot of Pokemon, thanks to the increase in damage that it wouldn't have been able to originally. Thanks to this. Flying Gem activates before acrobatic checks for items, so it actually obtains the boost for acrobatics. That is insane. That is actually insane. That really just makes this thing relevant enough to wall break about or revenge the moment its lures are gone, or the moment its answers are gone. So a lure set with Overheat or Hidden Power Grass is preferable. I've also suggested the substitute set. A substitute berry juice set, and Kingler actually talked a little bit about this thing later today, and that surprised me. Apparently people are already after this. I already thought this was going to be at least decent-ish. I definitely think it's going to be better to compare to the original set, than this set was originally. Even though I actually worked with it with a lure set which used Flame Charge. I don't think Flame Charge is going to be all that relevant. U-Turn is going to be better. This thing is the only set that would allow it to set up a Sword Stance. Not having the ability to set up a Sword Stance is probably the only thing that actually ruins all of its utility. This mon is shit without this set and Flying Jam. If it doesn't get Flying Jam, it's gonna be shit. It's gonna be like what, C mid, in my opinion, without Flying Jam. If it does get Flying Jam, B minus. B minus. You just need to make sure it doesn't get lured in, it doesn't get trapped, and doesn't get not even trapped. Trapping is not even that much of a problem. Flying Jump does a shitload against God, but doesn't knock it out. It has a lot of use with Flying Jump. It actually does. Like it does. It's a 1.5 times boost in this gen. Like they for whatever reason they boosted gems again. Probably to counteract the idea of I don't even know why. That makes Zemos even more redundant, but okay. I already talked about Dudu. Clink! Every move the move reminder can teach any move in the level up pool ahead of the level itself. The move reminder is about at the end of the game, you can say, so it doesn't really do a lot in the game itself, but for post game, that's amazing for metagames like LC. Clink is probably one of the most obvious ones. It can run return plus gear grind. That essentially allows you to 2-hit KO about everything in the metagame if one gear shift is up. Gear shift boosts speed by 2 and boosts attack by 1. This thing is powerful, defensive, and good enough to put in work. This is the set it was suggested to have ages ago. Ages ago. It just was fucked up by Game Freak for 2 full generations. Now this thing can actually show what it's able to do. And in a metagame with more fairies, this thing is not even bad. Now Rufflet. It gets Brave Bird. This thing is now an extremely, ridiculously deadly, powerful revenge killer. The only thing that hinders it is 80% accuracy. The bulk up set is still worthwhile, less effective than previous gen, and I definitely think it's even worth to suggest you can... Excuse me. Yo, Enigma. Definitely worth to suggest you can run Defog. Not now. Sorry, Enigma. Defog, return, Brave Bird, Defog, Return, and Substitute are probably moves you're gonna need. Not Substitute, Roost instead of Substitute. These two could actually be switched up as well. Bear Juice is really nice combined with Substitute. It means you don't need to run Roost. It also gives you some utility that Substitute regularly gives in LC. Pretty good. This thing now has access to Shadow Punch, but I still think Ice Punch plus Earthquake is still the most preferable thing. Dynamic Punch is still very, very nice. You can run Iron Fist without Dynamic Punch combined with Iron. Shadow Punch combined with Iron Fist and then switching off Dynamic Punch. That would actually be pretty decent because that makes Ice Punch very relevant. Because that actually does a nice increase in damage. But it doesn't make the mon that much better, in my opinion. Dynamic Punch is probably the most preferable thing because the confusion chance is gonna work with this thing. It's gonna work because that makes setup potential and so on and so forth. That makes this thing actually a bit more notable. Staryu, it can run an Athletic Life Orb right now. It can get Rapid Spin and Recover on that set right now, like with this set, like Athletic, Recover, Rapid Spin. It couldn't previously. That's pretty nice, I guess. It's not per se that good, but it's also not bad. It's essentially gonna allow you to KO about every single Pokemon, literally about every single Pokemon that the offensive Rapid Spin set was originally meant to do. But this thing actually does its job. Like, look at this damage calc. This is the average damage of Ice Beam. This is the average damage of Ice Beam. The second hit, that is 24 HP out of 25. Pumpkaboo can't counteract this thing anymore, thanks to Analytic. That's pretty freaking good. I still think Nature Cure is a preferable thing, but is a nice thing, but I don't think it's preferable. If you really want rocks up, or really want rocks gone, run this thing. Run this thing with an Analytic. It's really worth it. Porygon, it got Analytic as well, combined with Recover and Try Attack, because it couldn't previously. Woo! Who gives a shit about that set? Go to this set. I already swept Enigma with this thing. This is a pretty shitty battle. I'm not even gonna show it because I'm already overdoing time, apparently. Conversion, Z Conversion. Boosts all your sets by +1. This set runs essentially the same defenses as a regular Porygon set. Pretty freaking good. It runs 18 special attack, which is enough for a +1 boost, on top of your original +1 boost, to 2-hit KO Pokemon like Ponyard. Excuse me, I thought I heard something. With 12 speed, you're going to be able to get 18 speed, which is enough to speed high with Pokemon like Doodoo, but outspeed the 18 speed here. This also means you're going to be able to outspeed opposing Porygon, still going to be able to outspeed Pokemon like Timber and all that kind of stuff. And I really wanted this defense, I really wanted this HP investment, because that makes it able to outspeed a lot of stuff. And I needed this special attack. This set is what I think is going to be the most important set. I already gave it out to a couple of people, not just Kingler. But yeah, I even have the calc down here. You can look this up if you want. Already swept someone with this thing. This thing might actually get banned. Like, I'm actually saying this. This thing might actually get banned. You only need to get rocks up to deal with every 30-pon. Then you're gonna conversion on something that you can conversion on, which, essentially speaking, is like half the metagame, at very least. Half the metagame of setup opportunity, that's massive. That's actually massive. That, like, a lot of monsters can't on half the metagame set up a Cell Smash or whatever. So this makes it very, very relevant. Having access to Recover combined with that makes this thing very durable, makes this thing able to even counteract most offensive mons. I could have actually won 2 battles with this thing against Jocks as well, if I just spammed Recover against the Diglett that was spamming Earthquake, which does 36 damage. 36 damage against this thing. I mean, that's scary. That makes this thing able to literally recover up on a Diglett after it's set up, while having a +2 special attack. Thanks to download, +1. Then we're gonna look at Z Eevee, which is already banned. So, like I said, I'm gonna leave it up to the council to decide if they want to have this quick ban or not. Yeah, that's essentially it. I think I actually wrote that somewhere about the council. Nah, didn't apparently. Oh well. Probably did somewhere else. Yeah. I did vote for it if it were to be able. I definitely think Porygon is actually quite broken. I expected it to be less effective, but right now it's like, this thing is actually good. I don't mind Porygon getting banned. I don't think it's worth making like specific losses to like keep Pokemon in this metagame. I don't see the point. Porygon has been a really good Pokemon in past gen. Not to the point of being broken. It's a really balanced mon past gen. But in this gen, it's just like, okay, yeah. If that makes it broke, ban it. There is no other mon that makes similar abuse. This mon should be banned based on that. While with Q to Fly and Battle Pass, introduce just Battle Pass clause. Like, it's the easiest option because it makes us more comparable to other tiers. Even though that is the beauty of LC to be completely different, I don't care. It is the easiest option to solve all the issues around that poke and make it just still a relevant poke. Like, we have been hoping for a Pokemon like Cutify in ages, and Battle Pass might be the thing that makes it just bad to argue. And that's actually all the mons in this list as well. Wow, I went over that quite quickly. This gen looked good. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope it was a help for all of you. use whatever set in this as you prefer. There are a few things that I might need to change up in this list, but I think overall it might be the best analysis I could give. Perhaps even teleport on Cosmog, depending on the mover learn and stuff, if obtainable level 5 even. But yeah, I definitely think this is gonna be a good gen. I definitely think so. That's gonna be all. Ryan out.